your life to be like in 10 years? I want it to be stable. Okay. What else? I want to be comfortable. You mean you want to have like a chair that you can lay on? No, I want to have a comfortable life. What does that look like? How do you get there? Oh, it's too many questions. It's too much thinking. Probably. Because we don't know what that looks like. If you don't know what a thing is, then you can't go after it. You can't go get it. And even if you happen to just like by chance find it, you wouldn't even know that you had it. A cocaine trafficker, and he goes to the guy's house and there's this big sign on the wall that says the world is yours, and he sees that and he's like, oh, I like that. The guy shows up and he's like, hey, what's going on? Flashy suit, nice house, he's got a beautiful wife. Montana looks at him, he's like, all of a sudden he like falls in love with the boss's wife. He doesn't just fall in love with the boss's wife, he falls in love with the boss's life. He falls in love with the wall, he falls in love with the house, he falls in love with the woman, he falls in love with the lifestyle, but more than anything, he falls in love with the validation of being at the top of something. He's looking around the restaurant, and he's got his arms up on this booth, and he's got a cigar, and he just goes, is this it? This is what it's all about, man? In other words, is this what I was living my whole life for? Is this what I was trying to take over? A life that wasn't his, a life that was somebody else's, and he's willing to die for it. I'll give you a spoiler, he's about to die for it. The point is that it wasn't his dream. Yeah, he got to the top. Yeah, he proved it. Here's the gut-wrenching part of it. He got to the top of a life that wasn't actually his. Thing where your parents maybe expect you to be like a doctor or something like that. And you might think, well, that's a heck of a lot of expectations to put on a kid. Imagine if you're a little kid and your parents expect you to be a doctor from a very early age. And you might think like, wow, that's terrible. That's so much pressure. I'm not sure which is worse, to have all of that pressure or to have no pressure. Just be whatever, who cares? Doesn't really matter. I mean, if you have no expectation of you, what are the outcomes going to be like? Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that there's probably a balance in there, a mean, if you will. If you remember that phrase, don't forget that phrase, there might be a mean in there somewhere. Well, where to find that mean? I used when you mentioned a musician, I mentioned flautist because I had this student over at Southwestern College one time, and it was a philosophy course. And I was talking. He came to me afterwards and was talking to me about his parents really expecting him to become a pharmacist. He wasn't, I guess he was a doctor of pharmacology, and he was telling me that all this pressure that he had, and he'd been working all his life, which I thought was interesting because I ran into him at a community college. I didn't run into him at a university. I ran into him at a community college, and I asked him, well, then, kind of like, what are you doing at the community college if you had all this pressure? And he said that he was going to UCSD, but he couldn't take all the courses that his parents expected him to, so he was taking some courses over at Southwestern College on top of his UCSD courses. Yeah, so this guy had a lot of expectation. And I asked him, because his parents wanted him to finish in 3 years. Now, most universities now take you about 5 years. They wanted this dude to finish in 3, and he was on track to finish in 3. And I remember asking him, like, well, so you have a great deal of expectation. Do you think your life would be better if you had none? And he goes, no. And that's when he was saying, like, maybe a little bit less, because he was concerned about disappointing his parents. I can see that. You want to be motivated. You don't necessarily want to have a fear, but maybe have a motivation. And when I asked him, well, if you could do anything, perfect world, what would you do? And he said, honestly, I want to play the flute. And I thought, that's a big difference from pharmacology to, I'm like, you want to be a flautist? He says, yeah. Oh, and he's all excited. I knew the word flautist. And he said he's always wanted to play the flute, and he'd like to start in the San Diego Philharmonic. And he'd like to work his way up eventually. He said it'd be great to play in the New York Philharmonic and some world-class orchestra. And I sat with this guy. I remember talking to him for like an hour and a half after class one night. And he was just going through it, and he was just saying, you know what? I need to pursue this passion. I need to just tell my parents, I'm gonna play the flute more. And he thought it was ironic because the only reason he played the flute was because his parents made him when he was a kid. They wanted him to learn instruments. So they made him play the flute. He hated it first. He came to love it. And so he said, you know what? He stood up and he said, I really appreciate that, Professor. He thinks for a second. He goes, you know, Dr. Scanlon, I'm going home today, and I'm going to tell my parents. yes, I'll finish this, but I'm going to play the flute on the side, and I'm going to practice the flute more. And I'm going to play it, and maybe I'll play in an orchestra someday on the side while I pursue my degree in pharmacology. That was like his big rebellious statement. It wasn't that he wasn't going to do what they wanted him to. It was that he was also going to do the thing that he wanted to do. And I just thought, my goodness, the chances of this guy ever breaking out. And I hope, and I asked him what he thought about pharmacology. I don't think I even needed to talk to his parents. It was almost like I was looking at him. It was almost like I could see like this ghostly image of his parents, like superimposed on top of him talking to me. And he was saying, it's a respectable career, it's stable, it's a good living, and he's giving me all of these practical reasons. Now, what should he have done? I don't know. I haven't talked to him since the end of that semester. And that was, 8-9 years ago or so. I have no idea. He could probably finish with, he's probably a pharmacist somewhere. But then again, he could be my pharmacist for all I know. And I wouldn't recognize him because it was so long ago. In other words, he had to live with the choices of his life, not me. His parents kind of to a degree. But when you're asking someone like, why would your parents want these things for you? Yeah, there's probably a level of flexing that's there because by having children, they've assumed a responsibility, a really deep responsibility. Some people don't take that many people don't take that responsibility seriously enough. Some of us might think like, well, they take it too seriously. I don't know how that can be too seriously. You might say that parents maybe are too imposing or too overbearing, but I don't know how you take that responsibility too seriously. It's like saying that you take the responsibility of being a husband or a wife too seriously. I don't know how you go too far in certain commitments or obligations. It's like saying someone's too honest. I don't know necessarily what that means. But it's almost, how else would parents get a validation that they did a good job? They helped you set a goal, and they very well might think they helped you set a goal rather than they set the goal for you. That might be the possibility, but to understand that it probably is in the best intentions. Because they do want the best for you, probably. In fact, one of the hard things to get our heads around is that oftentimes our parents want better for us than we even want for ourselves. And it's difficult for us to want the best for ourselves because it's difficult for us to even know what it is that we want. Because how is it you could possibly know what you want? If I were to ask you today, what do you want for lunch tomorrow? That's only 24 hours away. I have no idea. Okay, fine. What do you want your life to look like in 10 years? Huh? Yeah. We don't even know what we want for lunch. We might have like a general idea. Tomorrow for lunch, I want food. What kind of food? Oh, tasty food, of course. You have a general idea. What do you want your life to be like in 10 years? I want it to be stable. Okay. What else? I want to be comfortable. You mean you want to have like a chair that you can lay on? No, I want to have a comfortable life. What does that look like? How do you get there? Oh, it's too many questions. It's too much thinking. Probably. Because we don't know what that looks like. If you don't know what a thing is, then you can't go after it. You can't go get it. And even if you happen to just like by chance find it, you wouldn't even know that you had it. It's like I'll tell you guys a story in a bit. Was it this class I talked about the glick?
The what?
The glick?
No.
Oh, okay. I'll tell you a story about a glick and after we're done with this, but in short, if I told you guys to go find a glick, and that's all of the information I gave you, you wouldn't even know where to start looking for it. And even if you just happened to find it and you were walking around and you put it in your pocket, you wouldn't even know that you had it in your pocket because you wouldn't even know what it was. Comfortability, happiness, success, a lot of these abstract things that we pursue, we don't even know what they are. And so what do? Well, we do what a reasonable person would do a lot of times. If your plumbing falls apart, who do you call? Plumber. How come you don't just fix it yourself? Obvious. Because you don't know how to fix it. You don't know what it is. So you rely on experts, or at least you rely on people who seem to know what they're doing. If you're walking down the hallway and you see a bunch of people just like running that way, Do you run towards where they're running away from, or do you go, uh-oh, and you turn and you start running along with the crowd? By and large, we'll run with the crowd because we don't know what's on the other side of that crowd. It's reasonable. It makes sense. In the case here, without opinions or impulses, without inclinations, without knowing what we want, he says that we're wish blocked. We don't know what we feel. We don't even know what we want in life. And so if you don't know what you want in life, and if you don't know how to get it, what do? Well, the crowd's all running that way. College. All right, let's go. I don't know, become a doctor. Okay. What's that guy over there doing? We're all running in one area. What's that guy over there doing? He's a weirdo. He's playing the flute. Huh. Wonder why. Where'd that guy go? Oh, he went and joined the Marines. But what's that? He became like an aquatic animal? No. Like it's a type of military thing. Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting. But we're all running, and every once in a while, someone shoots off into a different direction. And then if you stay that course, all of a sudden you get to the end, you're gassed, you look around, and you're the only one. You became the doctor. Congrats. Now the question is that what you wanted? Maybe. You guys ever seen Scarface before?
Huh?
You guys ever seen the movie Scarface? Oh, you should. There's this great scene at the end of it. Very long story short, it's about a guy who comes from Cuba, comes with nothing. He's a criminal. Long story short, back in the 60s, Cuba opened up its prisons and let the prisoners leave, as long as they left the island of Cuba, and a lot came to Miami, so it causes this kind of crime wave in Miami. And the movie's about this guy who shows up, Tony Montana. They call him Scarface because he has a scar on his arm. It's on his face, yes. So he has a scar on his face, and he just decides that he wants to essentially go back to what he's always known, which is crime. He wants to be a drug lord because he doesn't want to kind of sit out that way. He needs some quick money. A friend of his says, hey, this is a way we can make a bunch of money real fast, and that can get our life started. So he does that. And long story short, he gets involved with this crime boss, cocaine trafficker, and he goes to the guy's house, and there's this big sign on the wall that says, the world is yours. And he sees that, and he's like, oh, I like that. The guy shows up, and he's like, hey, what's going on? Flashy suit, nice house. He's got a beautiful wife. Montana looks at him, he's like, all of a sudden he falls in love with the boss's wife. He doesn't just fall in love with the boss's wife. He falls in love with the boss's life. He falls in love with the wall. He falls in love with the house. He falls in love with the woman. He falls in love with the lifestyle. But more than anything, he falls in love with the validation of being at the top of something. And so he pursues it. I'll spoil the movie for you. He ends up killing the guy, taking over his empire. He takes over the guy's business. He takes the guy's house. He takes the guy's wife. And he moves into a life that's not actually his. He didn't build it. He just took it over from somebody else. He took over somebody else's dream. It wasn't even his dream. And so he gets to the end of the movie. He's sitting in a restaurant, really expensive restaurant. He's wearing a suit. Everybody around him is, wealthy, playing music in the place. Expensive restaurant, like I said. He's got his best friend with him. He's got his wife with him, who is his boss's ex-wife. He's complaining about his life. He says he can't even have kids because the woman's taking too many drugs. She can't have children. And he's at the top of everything, but people are trying to kill him. It's just constantly problem after problem after problem. And he's looking around the restaurant, and he's got his arms up on this booth, and he's got a cigar, and he just goes, is this it? This is what it's all about, man? In other words, is this what I was living my whole life for? Is this what I was trying to take over? A life that wasn't his, a life that was somebody else's, and he's willing to die for it. I'll give you a spoiler, he's about to die for it. The point is that it wasn't his dream. Yeah, he got to the top. Yeah, he proved it. But here's the gut-wrenching part of it. He got to the top of a life that wasn't actually his. Couldn't he have gotten to the top of a life that it was his if he had gone that route? Maybe. And so you can't have your own opinions, your own inclinations, and your own impulses unless you know yourself. And that's the part that really blocks most people off. It's to know yourself. What is it that's important to you, and why? And can you stand by that in the face of a world that knows better than you? If you know what I mean when I say that. It's not that they know better than you, but they might think that they know better than you what's good for you. And we're constantly being told that. Oh, this is what's good for you. Money is good for you. Education is good for you. Stable life is good for you. Blah, 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 blah. It's not that it's wrong. It's not that it's right either. It's good for some people, not for others. Why should you go to college? Most of you? No. If I'm honest with you, most of you should not go to college. You should go to college if you're going to become a doctor, if you're going to become a lawyer, if you're going to become an engineer. In other words, if you're going to do something that you actually need that thing. But to just go to college just to get an education, you can get an education with a library card. Whether or not you have the self-motivation to do that is different. You can get an education with free classes online. MIT and Stanford offer free classes online that you can take. You don't get the college credit because you're not paying for it, but you still get the education. So if the education is what you're after, then sure, get it that way. If you just want to be able to say, I set a goal for myself to graduate from college and that's why I'm going to do it, well then sure. But to rack up tens and tens and tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt to live somebody else's dream, that's an expensive dream. Not for them, it's free for them. Costs you though. And so the question is that, are you willing to bear that cost for somebody else's dream? Maybe. Because for some of you, it might be a matter of like, you know what, it's worth it to make my parents proud. That might be worth it. Maybe you'll find something that you love. But that's what makes life so damn complicated, because it's a lot to figure out, a lot to work out. But at least at that point, it is your opinion. It is your desire. It is your impulse. But some people are wish blocked. They don't know what they feel. They don't know what they want because they don't know themselves. So first things first, know yourself. Do the work of discovering what's important to you and why. Then you know what to stand for. Once you know what to stand for, you have a why. And if you have a why, you can find a how for no matter what you want to do in your life. Questions? Comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
Yeah.